Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. I am here today with our guest, Hillary Cauthen. Did I say it right?
You said it right. You got it.
Oh, okay. Well, I think last time I kind of tore it up a little bit, but I try not to do that, but I tend to, you know, look at letters and words and how they're arranged, and I don't admit this too often, uh, but a little bit dyslexic back in the day. Well,
Mhm.
I guess it really never
I don't
goes
think it
away.
goes. I don't think it goes
Yeah,
away. It's just how your brain
never.
works.
Yeah, it never really goes away. So every now and again, I'll get something all messed up, and I'll pronounce it however. But it's never stopped me from doing anything. So, and it shouldn't for you folks out there that might be a
Right.
little bit challenged sometimes. Okay, so Hillary, I know we've had you on before. We're glad to have you back. We want to talk about a whole lot of stuff, but when we were off the camera in the green room, not recording, whatever you want to call it, you said you just wrote a book or just
Yes.
finished writing a book. So tell us first, catch us up on what you're doing, and then tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think the book has been a journey. I started it last year. It is in pre-order right now, so it actually comes out December 1st. It's called "Hello Trauma: Our Invisible Teammate," which really builds off of the TED talk I did on the toxicity of the sport culture on athletes' mental health, taking a
Right.
different lens. It's a story of the healing arc of trauma. It helps you understand what trauma is, what it experiences, whether you yourself have gone through something or you're going to be interacting with someone in your life that's gone through something because we all have stuff. And so it really just normalizes and names what we go through and how to utilize it as our teammate and ideally a good teammate. And then the second half is my passion pitch, a call to action, which uses sport as a microcosm of our society that can reinforce trauma to occur if we don't get the culture right, if we don't coach our coaches to lead and be accountable and have empathy and really is a call to action to create better environments for our athletes.
Okay, so we're gonna dig into that a little bit later, but first, keep telling us about how you got to the book. What
um you
what
know I
what made you decide? I think I'll write a book now.
it's a funny thing. I think when you're entering in the field, you think like, oh yeah, like maybe one day I'll write a book. That sounds fun. And then I thought, no way. I did some book chapters. That was great. But last year, I remember it was in October at a professional development seminar, and we're going around the room and we're asking what our goals are. And, I was turning 40 in 2023, and I thought, oh, I could make this like big milestone, qualify for Boston, go do something like that. And that just didn't seem enough. And
Right.
I was like, I need to stretch. I need to push myself. Like I'm going to own what I'm doing, what I believe in. And so I just said, I'm going to write a book. And no one questioned it. At the point, I wasn't really sure the story that I wanted to tell or how the book was going to come about. I just knew I wanted to speak my passion to the world and make an impact. And a year later, I went to that conference with book in hand and said, here you go, guys. I wrote a book.
Well, the most things that we do in our lives that really end up meaning something or having some meaning while we do it are those things we decide to do that put us outside our comfort zone or
Mm-hmm.
outside of where we're normally, on the top of the pyramid. And I've started I haven't started writing a book, but I've thought about it a couple of times, and you know, big old chicken, I guess. But I keep getting scared away from it, saying I'm going to do something else or I'll start it later. But anyway, so you wrote this book, and you
Yep.
kind of have. Um, can I? Is it fair to say you have a dual themed? It's kind of covering two
Yeah, it,
things.
it is. It is dual themed, right? It's interesting, right? Because if you're not an athlete, you can still pick up the book and get something from it, and you can relate
Okay.
to it, right? Because we are all performers, we're all human, and the underlying tone is a healing message of normalizing what we go through, making meaning of it, and then digging in within yourself and saying, hey, like any environment I go into, I need to bring this to the forefront. And I need to
Right.
stand up for what's right and learning how to do the right thing. And so if you're a leader or a CEO of a different company, you can still understand something. If you're a parent of an athlete, you're going to connect to things differently. But it is two parts, and I've written it that way, and I've done a nice little way to kind of link them together. But it's putting both of my passions together, which I think speaks true to me as a professional, right? I work with direct player care, and I hear the stories, and part of my art is helping individuals learn how to deal with their emotions, feel them, utilize them, optimize themselves into what they're doing. And then the other portion is speaking the truth and changing culture and organizational systems. And it is a blend of what both of my passions are in the field that I work in.
Okay. Having a doctorate in the field of psychology, let
Mm-hmm.
me ask this because I'm on the research side, you're on the more the clinical side.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's about finding out and understanding the why, not necessarily taking it to the athlete. I do that on a different level. I'm more physical on that side. So
Mm-hmm.
I do the physical training, but why are you acting this way? Why are you thinking this way? Why? For me, that's the research side. So recently, um, I've began the study of culture and how culture, not only your the athlete culture, but now your personal culture and how those two worlds collide.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm finding out is there's some troubled waters in there. There's some turmoil in there where you talk to one athlete one way, but if you talk to the next athlete that way, then it's a problem. And when I say a problem, I don't necessarily mean that that you did something wrong or the athlete did something wrong, but you're just not going to get through to them doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Mm-hmm.
we are both in Texas,
Yep.
so let's recently I've worked with Latina athletes. So
Mm-hmm.
the question was, how does your culture affect your acceptance, view, perspective of X? And you can throw X in there as anything. You can put it in as a consultation. You can put it as in training. You can put it as the sport environment. X is how does your culture affect you doing different things?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about on that side building the right culture.
Yeah. So I like to say that I work with the person within the player, which I
Okay.
think speaks to how I view culture versus climate, right? So
Okay.
there's essence of a sport organization, sport team, which is the culture of the team. When you come in and you put on this jersey, you put on this kit, this gear, you are morphing into the culture, but the climate will change based on what's
Ah,
happening, what's going on, how you show up. And I think this is the messaging that we're not really getting right because organizations, yes, can be person centered and work in the individual momentum of that person and what will
right.
help motivate them. But they can still maintain a cultural essence of what they believe in, the foundational aspects. Like you should. People move to Texas for whatever reason it might be. If we look at Austin, it's food, it's music, it's
Right.
young, it's vibrant. You know, people join a team because of the culture that is there, the essence of what they believe in, the values, the
Right.
system. They're a part of that. They put that jersey on and it represents that. It doesn't change the temperature and the barometer of who those people are. We then have to adapt because, as we know, living in, for me in Austin, it has changed in the past 10 years. I'm still here because I'm adapting, I'm responding, I'm
Right.
learning. And so that is the essence that I think these sport organizations and businesses need to function in is that you will have a foundational culture that will adapt based on the climate changes that come in, but you still can set the foundation of what you want that culture to be.
Okay. I think a lot of times in sports we think culture, we think either really fluid or really rigid. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? This culture is fun loving. They let you do anything and you're responsible. Yeah. Or this culture is, regimented and you have to do it this
Mhm.
way. Is it that way really?
I think I've seen organizations that are both, right? I
Okay.
think without a stable foundation, the culture will break. You have got to have a stable foundation of what sets you apart. It's not words just on a wall. It has to be actions and it has to be people leading that. And the leaders have to lead and you have to represent that. And you have to be accountable. I think what is missing, to your point, is there's no accountability in the actions. You just have the words on the wall and you actually have to be accountable to insist that people learn and adapt and thrive in the culture you're setting.
Let's move right into accountability, um, and what that does to climate and how that affects culture. Hopefully, not getting too deep for some people, but these are some questions that we get asked. Next time you have
Right.
this type of professional on, ask these questions or tell us about
Mm-hmm.
this,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of young kids out there, and although you're a young kid to me, there are there are there are a lot of folks out there that are young kids to you,
Yep.
but they kind of use that all three of those words synonymously. They all
Mm-hmm.
mean the same thing: culture, climate, how we are, blah blah blah, and they don't understand how one affects the other. So talk to us a little bit about
Yeah, I
why that
think,
is.
well, the best way that I can put this, and this is a lesson learned from my dad. Growing up, I was taught rules are rules and deals are deals. And that is
Okay.
the essence that I think any culture that's going to survive and make change is going to be real, right? You have set standards of rules that this is how we function. We do no harm to people. We show up when we're expected to. We're
Okay.
loyal. X, Y, or Z. These are the
Yeah.
rules. The deals might be if we have a standing meeting at 9 o'clock, but I know that you have a different meeting with an academic counselor and that's the only time that can happen, you can call me up respectfully within a time frame and we can adjust your appointment time because
Right.
you've been responsible and you've shown up and you've respected the relationship. We make a deal for you to miss something because some extenuating circumstance. But it doesn't
Yeah.
change the rule for everyone else, right? And so I think the things when you're talking about rigid or fluid or culture, all that, like one, we have to always look within ourselves, within the nature of who we are, and say, okay, what are our values? Are we living by them? What are the things that we know that these are the rules that have to be in place? And then where can you make a deal when needed? And that has to be across the board for everyone, not just the star player gets the deals. Anybody can get these deals if they've shown you that they commit to the rules. The one thing that people often miss is how long it takes to build culture and then checking back in and changing the culture based on the climate. So these things don't just happen the first year you're in. It takes about 3 to 5 years to truly establish the core root of who you are and what you believe in. And then you have to check back in and constantly evaluate, saying, hey, are we getting it right? Are we doing it right? Are the people changing? Because we know the young kids that you're talking about to me are very different than my generational kids and very different
Yep.
than the generation before me. And you have to continuously check in and learn and understand COVID has impacted us all differently, but it has
Right.
for sure impacted our young youth athletes in terms of how they socially interact with each other, how they communicate, how their response system is. If you don't pay attention to what's going on in the world and don't change your culture, then we have an issue and things break.
Look, when you pair that with the next two words I'm going to use or throw at you, accountability and responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and kind of look at you and go. Ready, set, go.
Well, responsibility is the behavior that the person is showing, right?
Right?
Accountability is me making sure you're going to do those things, and if you don't, we have the consequence in place, or I have a teaching lesson in place.
Yeah, I think, pardon me, obviously
It was a
that's
good chime. That was like a really good like
yeah.
right? Like, ding, ding,
Obviously
ding,
that's
got
going to
it
go off while I'm waiting here. But you hear a lot of older coaches, older trainers, older practitioners talk about this generation's they're not responsible and they don't like accountability.
Mm,
But what I found a lot of times is, what have you given them to be responsible
right.
for or with,
Yep.
and do you hold them
Exactly.
accountable? Because
Exactly.
if you tell me it's going to be this way, and if you don't do this, then it's going to be this. But then I watch six people do whatever it is you're not supposed to do, and nothing happens. But then I go to do it, and you're up one side of me and down the other.
Hmm.
I got a credibility problem with you.
Well, and then the person who is supposed to be holding people accountable is not being responsible themselves.
Right,
And then that's where the
right.
culture fails, right? Leaders have to lead.
So cultures, climates, change, accountability, responsibility. It's a whole lot of words. How do
Hmm.
you
I just like to say accountable action.
accountable action?
You just have to have accountable action. Hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess you can say that.
Yeah. And I say,
All
like, I
right.
think it starts with first, what I preface was there has to be an empathetic engagement, right? First, we have
Right.
to be empathetically engaged, knowing our people, committed to knowing them, building the relationship, and then I'm going to have accountable action. But I have to have action.
Well, I think I never threw the word empathy in there, but definitely, engagement. But I understand the empathy in that whole statement because if you can't put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and you can't empathize to some degree on any level, then I'm not sure you should be leading anything.
Right.
Now
Well, and it goes back
that
to your point, right? Of culturally, we all come in with something different with our own biases, our own viewpoints, who
right.
we are, what shapes us. And so we have to be empathetic to learning and have perspective taking and building both ways. And then we can actually have the trust and foundation to then be accountable and have action.
Okay, so the final word out before we kind of change subjects a little bit. Let's circle back around and touch change a little bit.
Hmm.
How often in your world have you found and or have had to fight resistance to change? Change is absolutely necessary. You see it, you know it, but there's resistance. Put it that way.
I mean, at an individualistic level, when clients come into me, they're coming into me with the intent of
Right.
most often trying to fix a problem. I have few that come in just to like want to optimize themselves. But the
Right.
reality is, when you're coming in and there's a concern, we always look at what stage of change are you at? We call it trans theoretical model of change. Like, where are
Right.
you at in the terms of actually making change? And true work in clinical frameworks and counseling is it's really hard to change and relearn patterns and break them and
Yeah.
learn new ways to think, right? When we talk about the dyslexic brain in the very beginning, you
Yeah.
have to learn new ways to think and function to get the sounds
Right.
right to read correctly. You're reframing your brain.
Right.
In my clinical setting, I have to help individuals when they're ready, where they're at, to make change to function better. And if we take it to a holistic team approach, well, that's a bigger challenge to make a whole
Yeah.
team change, the whole
Yeah.
leaders change, and everyone comes in ready to go with all the energy. But when you push back and say, hey, I want to just make this known to you that this is what I'm seeing happening. These are things that maybe are obstacles in our way of being successful. When you're the bearer of that news and you're pushing the boundary and saying, what you're doing right now may not be the best, defense mechanisms come up, walls come up. Like,
Yeah.
are you sure? Like, who am I to tell that, And so you
Yeah.
have to build the
This is the way
relationship
we've
with
always
trust.
done it. What do you
Mm-hmm.
mean? What
Yep.
do you mean? How much experience do you have at? What
Yeah.
I've heard so much of that. You know, this is just a little story, but I was working with a team. I'm not going to divulge where they're from or what sport because I don't want to give them up like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was working with a team, and I went to the coach with some news like that. I said, Coach, I said, your players like you, but they don't respect you. And he was like, "What do you mean? How long have you been doing?" I mean, I said, "Okay." I said, You didn't listen to me." I said, "They like you, but they don't respect you."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, why do you think that is?" I said, "Because you're their buddy, and you don't
Right.
hold them accountable for anything. And you let them off early. You do all these things that are counter to what you say your coaching philosophy is.
Mm-hmm.
So they know they can do whatever they want to, and they can probably talk you out of whatever punishment that is warranted, or at least whatever reaction that is warranted for their action.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, I don't think you don't have the position to tell me that. You can't tell me, yeah, 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 yeah. And I said, look, I'm your buddy. You can't see this, and your subordinate coaches aren't going to tell you this.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you. They like you, but they don't respect you. I
Mm-hmm.
said, all I want you to do is count how many show up to your next meeting. I mean, how many show up late to your next meeting. I said, count. Don't come in last. Don't be late yourself. Get there on time instead of making adjustments for them. Get there on time and then tell me. And he fought me all the way. But then his next meeting, when he had over half the team late,
Mm-hmm.
and they were all laughing and joking, like it was okay to be late.
Right.
He said, "Well, what am I supposed to do about it? That some of them have this and some of them have that and this." I said, "Well, you're making a bunch of excuses for them." I said, "That's the last thing you need to do. What you need to do is hold them accountable." You said the meeting was at, let's say, 2 o'clock. If they're there at 5 till 2, they're probably late because they got to get out of the car, they got to get to wherever in the building the
Right.
meeting is, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if he ever really got it, but that's an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a hard position to be in when you're the provider and you're getting trust and you're trying to give feedback,
Right.
and the coaches and the leaders like are asking for that, but it is an art of talking without talking, right? And helping
Right.
shape things, and also I think as a provider, and this is where I think my field for sure needs to be better about it, is staying true to your values of doing the right thing, and
Yeah.
sometimes having the hard conversations and knowing that that might mean you're out the door, but you came in to do your job and you stood by your values of doing what was right to serve the organization you're a part of. And you might not be the best fit for them because maybe they weren't ready to change or it just didn't work out of your dynamics. But I think providers need to also do the work and say, like, am I living the values that I stand by as a practitioner, and
Right.
doing what's best in the field?
Right. To use that example, was I on time for the meeting?
Right.
I can't tell the coach he's got a bunch of people late for the meeting and I'm one of them.
Right.
that's, that's a little, and your credibility is again shot. You-
Right.
You're no
100%.
longer you're no longer being listened to. But those kind of things. I think every field faces. I know I face it on the physical side of preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm not asked to solve that on the physical side of preparation. It's the
Right.
mental side that's asked to solve that problem or to bring that problem up. So if we're sitting in the room and you and I are on time
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking and I'm saying, dang, everybody's late. The next thing I'm going to say is, what you going to do about that?
Right.
because because I'm taking them over to the bench press.
Yep.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But
Mm-hmm.
no, all joking aside, I'm not sure that everybody gets how hard it is to step into that type of situation that you have the authority to do, but to step into it with authority is different. If that made any sense, it's
Yeah, and
harder.
I think the issue too, if we're looking at the physical metrics, the sports science side of things, we can physically see change, we can track that better numerically, we can
Right,
understand the progression and what's happening. Where even if I'm coming up with my own metrics and trying to understand the mental and emotional side to compare that to a physical metric, it's still very subjective. And there's a
right,
lot of trust. And I think the hardest part is when we can't see the intangible and we can't make sense of the mental and emotional, we can't grasp it, we can't physically hold on to it. Like, how do we know that something is working? How do we know that something is changing? And that all goes back down to the trust of the provider and the trust of the people that are reporting what's happening. And that is really hard. It makes it very complex in this field that I'm in.
How do you build that trust?
Well, it goes back to that empathetic engagement, right?
There we
Like,
go. Yeah,
it goes back to
I'm
being
with
a
you.
human, right? Like, I think
Okay.
it does come back to naming the uncertainty, being very real and transparent, building the vulnerability, and then naming the tangible behavioral things that people would like to see and making a game plan and saying, hey, we're going to be realistic, but this is a journey and it's not something you're going to get right now. It's going to
Okay.
take time.
Okay. So I've circled you back around to a couple of things that bring us back to things like climate, things like the empathetic engagement, and so on. But what I'm attempting to do, I don't know if I do it very well or not, but what I'm attempting to do is get you to explain um, to our listeners just how important being able to lead in the right way is.
Mm-hmm.
If and I hope I'm saying that to get enough
Yeah.
impact to our listeners, but because some lead to be a leader, um, it's not something you can just say, "Hey, I'm a leader."
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people say, "Well, leaders are just natural, or leaders are you can make a leader." I think leaders come from everywhere, and sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't even know you're a leader until you're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else
Well,
points it out to you. Go ahead.
and I think for me with leadership, I always say like we're having living leadership. All of us are a leader in our own right. We're a leader of ourselves and we're a leader into our actions, and we have to live within the leader that we are. And whether that means I live by leading in my actions and I show up and I'm accountable and I'm not going to be boisterous, not vocal. These are the people that are not in defined leadership roles. But as a human, when you show up on any member of a team, you are leading within yourself to then lead others. Now, if you are in a prescribed leadership role with authority, that is what we're discussing. Of there are some true qualities you have to have in order to make effective change, leading quote unquote the right way, which to me is like first just be a good human. Like be a
Yeah.
good human and be vulnerable and check the ego and come in with openness and a kind heart to reach the goals that everyone prescribes to. Like first and foremost, just be a good human.
If you're if I call that first step caring. If you care,
Yep.
you know what I mean. If you care, it's going to show up everywhere in how you deal with the janitor, the
Mm-hmm.
cook, the nutritionist, the psychologist, the athletic trainer. It's going to show up everywhere, and
Yep.
it's never going to be. I mean, I think a lot of times in performance we've had situations where there was it's kind of a bullying, it's kind of a bullying mentality in the
Mm-hmm.
whole profession of strength and conditioning, physical performance, and those kind of things. And people, there were more than a few people in the profession that would just be bullies about things.
Yep.
More than one thing. And when performance came into the realm and we started working with, then now we see more athletic trainers, we see nutritionists, we see sports psychologists, we see this expert and that expert, and they're telling us, well, if you do this, this is what's going to happen, or if this happens, then this needs to happen, and we deal with all that stuff, or we thought we dealt with all that stuff already, and who are you to tell me how to go about X?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Um, Go ahead.
I mean, I think like 2 points that just got my brain spin. One, my big tagline is a culture of care for culture champions, which is the
Yeah.
essence that we're talking about. We have
Right.
to create a foundation of care. And and hearing you discuss about the bullying nature and how things are in the ego is like to me that's the toxic side of sport that has always existed. And the duality when I'm saying, hey, we have to have a culture of care, I think when people hear this because of this masculine nature of sport or performance, it's like oh, I have to have soft feelings and I
They
can't
they
be
think soft
accountable.
instead of
And
yeah.
they don't understand like care means like actually taking time to connect with a human, to understand them, to help them feel that they belong, right? Like all of us as humans need people to see us, to hear us, to listen and understand us. That is the essence of care. It's not helping someone be accountable and responsible and doing things the right way and giving them corrective feedback. Like you can have hard discussions with an essence of care. I don't need to
And
downgrade you, demean you, call you out
yeah,
of your name to get you to change. I can
and
have
you
respect.
and you can work people, especially athletes, as hard as you want to work them, and as long as they know you really care, and I mean we're not really foul mouthed on the show, but as long as they think you give a shit,
Yeah.
they're gonna lay it all on the line for you. They'll work hard for you
100%.
every day. The moment
Yes.
they think you don't care, and it doesn't matter, you know what you do. The moment they think you don't care, you lost them at any level. At any level, and you know, I used to have a coach tell me, "You're babying the girls." I said, in the first place, I don't see any girls, out there on the pitch. I see athletes,
Hmm.
so I'm going to treat them like athletes.
Right.
So, and that's not to mean that they're anything short of human being or female. I understand that,
Hmm.
but they're out here today because they're athletes. Now,
Hmm.
if they want to leave and go back to the locker room, take a shower, and put on a dress, I'm all for it. I mean, it makes me no difference.
Right.
You know, that's that's a female athlete. But today,
Hmm.
I'm working with the athlete.
Right.
Now, I care about everything else and everyone, but that's why I can work them as hard as I work them because
Hmm.
they know I care.
Right.
So, and he just looked at me. He just kind of looked at me like, they're going to be worn out before the game. Well, the game's on Friday, coach, and these are young people.
Right.
They will be fine. They will be good to go.
Hmm.
Um, so we've circled all the way back around to when we brought up caring.
Hmm.
So let's talk about what in this profession what you care about. Now, I expect to hear a little bit of the book. I expect to hear a little bit of um, a continuation on what we talked about before.
Hmm.
Do you remember what we talked about before?
What, like our very first time?
Yeah.
Oh goodness, probably all things I still do. I don't know what I work from. You can remind me.
Okay. I'm
um,
just I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
um, yeah. All right. So, what I truly care about is connecting with individuals and helping them thrive, helping them learn how to live a happy and successful life in whatever they're doing. I'll never forget my kid. Um, she was 4 at the time, and when I was doing my TED talk, I was asking her, like, she's 9 now. She's one of 4 of my children, so I have to clarify. My 9-year old, my second oldest, when she when I was like, hey, what do I do for work? Right? What does mommy do? And she's like, well, you teach people how to be happy. Like it hit me in the heart with like the best thing possible of what my work could possibly be
Wow.
is teaching people how to
Yeah.
be happy. Like,
Wow.
and I say that with the fact that you don't just wake up happy. It is
No,
hard work to learn how to be happy.
it's a
And I
choice.
just learned this crazy fact. Like, I can't believe I didn't even know this. Like, 'cause I'm all about feeling your feelings, but, um, our 6 universal emotions that we feel, right? Primarily across the world, all of us feel anger, sadness, disgust, fear, joy, and surprise. Easiest way to remember it is just watch Inside Out and you know all your primary emotions. But of those 6, technically 5, because I'm not one. I don't know anyone who thinks surprises are amazing, high
Yeah,
happy emotions.
that's
They're
why I gave
terrifying.
you the old side
There
eye
is
right there.
there
Surprise,
is
surprise.
one
Okay.
one emotion that is positive. Sad, anger, fear, disgust are all
Yeah.
negative primary emotions. So if we're looking at how our brain already prescribes to seeing the world, we are constantly battling the negative
Negative.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so for me to hear, I teach people to be happy, it's like, yes, I'm teaching people to live a life that they can find joy and gratitude and grace and put themselves in ways that they can live and optimize how they choose at the optimal level they want to have. And at the core root, have calm and happiness. Like that is a huge passion for me, right?
So how am I going to do that? And we're going to come back to
Yeah.
that stuff. But how am I going to do that with athletes? Because I think it's important. I'm asking the question because I think it's important for athletes to realize that they need to make some choices to be happy about where they're at, how they're doing, what they have in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
and I think some of the best athletes in the world, you know, at some point on their climb to being the best in the world, were just they found joy in whatever they were doing. They were
Mm-hmm.
happy. Now some of them, you get out of balance sometime, or as my mom used to say, you get out of order sometimes. And but go ahead.
I think, athletes finding their true happiness and being grounded, they have to be grounded in themselves. It's a sense of security. True living a life of happiness is not just one form of your identity, which
Right.
athletes have a trap of falling into. They are
Ooh.
an athlete. We always try to say, like, oh, sports, what you do, it's not who you are. Well, I can't discredit that person is identifying as an athlete, and that is a true sense of self. It's a part
Right.
of them. And let's own that, but let's also build upon more of who you are. You need to have a foundation of all of the things you are and take time feeding into those and fueling those, and not having sport be all of what you do and where you focus in your energy, and take time, even if it's literally 5 minutes, to listen to some music and let your brain wind down, and then you want to go back to film review. Awesome. I'm not saying
Yeah.
you have to be ideally multi sports are great, but sometimes we specialize. But you have to just find groundedness and what I call consistent coping to lead to optimizing your happiness and fueling the secure sense of self that you are.
Okay. All right. What was the second half of that question?
Of things I care about.
Yeah.
Uh, Athletes' mental health, mental health in general, and I think you know, to me, a true part of who I am is speaking the hard truth. I care about calling out platitudes and things that we just don't prescribe to. Like every time I hear it's okay to not be okay, I'm like, really? I don't think so. There's no like call into
Yeah.
sick mental health day, really. Like, I'm sorry, you're
Yeah.
gonna be judged and shamed, and we
Yeah.
don't set
Yeah.
it up. Like, no thanks. I wish that were the case. Partly I say this because I am passionate about mental health, and I'm passionate about educating that mental health is not mental illness. Mental health is what all of us have, like physical
Right.
health. And
Right.
until we create systemic change where we provide services to check in regularly on your mental health, just like we do for our children till they're 18, where we
Right.
require them to go to a pediatrician and
Right.
go to the doctor to do a wellness check. It's so simple. Do a wellness check on your mental health minimally one time a year.
What's
Minimally.
what's what's the perceived crime in that? I
There is a
mean,
I think there's a fear that someone's going to identify that they have a mental illness, that they're wrong, that they're different, that they are we still have the stigma that, like, even when you first started talking, right? Here, prime example, dyslexia is a
yeah.
learning disability that falls
Right.
under the DSM-5 that says your brain learns different. And you're like, "Oh, I grew out of it." I'm like, "No, you didn't. Your brain didn't grow out
No.
of it.
It
You don't
and
have to
and
be you don't have to be ashamed of it. It's
and
how your brain works."
there's nothing that says I didn't learn, or there's nothing that says I couldn't learn or whatever.
Yes.
But it was just going to be different. I remember a teacher. She was I don't want to call her. She was a reading instructor,
Hmm.
and she found how I learned, and I was in middle school. I went down to that little room. Of course, I'm already identifying as an athlete, so I'm embarrassed to go down there because, I'm not dumb.
You
That's
don't
my
be a dumb
thing.
jock. We can call it what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So that's my thinking, right?
Yep.
So I go down there, and she does whatever little test she does, and And then she says, how do you feel about what you did just now? Was it, do you think you got through it right? So, and, of course, I tell her it's probably eighth grade. I tell her, yeah, I'm, fine, whatever. And she says, well, tell me what you just read. And because I butchered probably half of it,
Right.
I had no comprehension of what I read.
Yep.
So it was just clusters of words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so she gave me 3 comic books, and she said, "Go home, and your book report is due, whatever day it was, and tell me when you get back here. Tell me what you read."
Mm-hmm.
So I went home and I read those comic books like 5 times. One, because I wanted to know what was happening in the pictures. Two,
Right.
two, because I didn't know, and it didn't make sense. When you thought about it, it didn't make sense. When you look at the picture and you look at the words, it wasn't making sense. So
Right.
I came back and I told her that, yada, yada, yada. And she probably talked me through a whole bunch of stuff. The bottom line is she cared and she took the time to
Mm-hmm.
teach me to look at words a certain way and to check myself a little bit.
Yep.
If it didn't make sense, read it again.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read it several times and it still doesn't make sense, then it's probably not the fact that you're getting the words wrong, is that you don't know what the meaning of something is.
Yep.
See, because I was carrying a whole bunch of frustration,
Mm-hmm.
even in 8th grade, about having that issue, because I didn't have a learning. I could learn,
Mm-hmm.
but it was if you tell me read chapter 5 and come back and tell me what that's about. In the first place, chapter 5 has too many words.
Right.
I'm not
No,
trying to read. I'm not trying to read chapter 5. But anyway, I hopefully the listeners get the point of what I was trying to make there, is that trying to expand on what you were talking about, that just because something is different doesn't mean it's wrong.
100%. And I think this goes back to your point of like, why don't we have mental health check-ins or mental wellness check-ins, or the physical stuff? Like, doctors, as much as they help you get better, they're still perceived that they're going to tell you something is wrong. And I think we have that same viewpoint with mental health, psychotherapy, counseling. You're going there because something's wrong, because we haven't
Right.
changed the framework that you're going there to actually just make you feel good.
And sometimes, yeah, I mean, even on the physical side with doctors, sometimes we as professionals get caught in the trap.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody comes in to see us, and because they're looking for something that's wrong, we're going to give them, okay,
Right. Right.
here's what's wrong. Here's what that's called.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought you said I didn't have anything wrong with me.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
here's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I got a couple of words for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, as we're moving right along here, dang, man, the time is just kind of flying. Let's talk about what's up next for you. We got the book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep saying the book.
The book you got. I mean, Hello Trauma. It's like, what a fun title, right?
Yeah.
Like, check it out. Amazon, Kindle.
There you go.
You get it.
Push it. There you go.
HillaryCauthen.com. You can just go right to it, find it.
There you go. Hey, so but let's talk about along with the book or after the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the book, I've had some opportunities, which is a big passion of mine now too, is just getting out and having these conversations, right? Continuing to spread the message, spread awareness, help listeners and others think differently and make change and be curious, right? Like, that's amazing. That if, the way I view my book right now is, my oldest will be 12 next week, right? So I'm imagining the book is like sending my kid to college, and I'm like, go make an impact. I don't know if it's going to make an impact, but I'm trusting that it will, right? That's kind of how I view, like, when your kids go to college, like, you're out in the world. I've done what I can. I'm hoping that this is my first baby, and we're like, go do something. I believe in you.
Do good.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm getting out, and I want to keep speaking, and a part of it, I have really great upcoming opportunities coming out where I'm going to educate coaches on this idea of culture, and I'm a part of this conference in March is the first ever female led providers to coaches at the women's Final Four. It's called Changing the Game, which is really
Okay.
awesome for us to just educate coaches on how to think differently, lean into this, have the conversations to hopefully then inspire change. I'm going to do a couple other conference and speaking gigs. I held a book event 2 weeks ago and gave back to the community with some coaches and sport analysts, just having these conversations of called Hello Trauma, Hello Change, with the
Right.
essence let's do something. And through that, one of my panelist members, Rod Babers, former UT football player, NFL player, he's on the horn, sport analyst. He likes
There
to
you
call
go.
himself the pop culture critic, right? Um, he had said something to me that said, we need to have more of these conversations and we need to have more athletes speaking with athletes. And I sat with it, and then I had a conversation and I said, you know what? I'm going to make a podcast. And they're like, well, what's the name going to be? And it's going to be called Highs and Lows of X's and O's, because that's what we got to talk about. And I want to keep having a space that can have conversations that's not good or bad. It just is life. And then we work through what's the change that can come from that, and just
Yeah.
reframe
The
how we see.
highs and lows of X's and O's.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Oh, we're gonna have to interview you on that one too.
Perfect.
Here's way back in 2016 when I started this gig. The thing for me was to give back to
Hmm.
the community at large, but specifically to professionals that are involved with athletes and performance. And I thought it was about just the physical preparation side until
Yeah.
we got rolling. And then
Yeah.
then we realized really quickly, me and my co-host who's got his own thing going right now. But then we realized really quickly that there's a big mesh of professionals that need to be talking to each other, and they need to be talking to each other honestly. So this
Yeah.
is where we kind of bring folks on like you. We bring on athletic trainers. We have people from the professional world, the the collegiate world, high school, all over the place. And they say, hey, just tell us what you think.
Hmm.
Tell us what you think and why. So now we're to the why part.
Yeah.
Why? Why? We know why you think it's important.
Hmm.
Okay. But why do you think you your perspective is important to the delivery? What are you bringing me?
Well, I was an athlete myself, right? I grew up as a youth athlete. I specialized as an athlete. I competed. I didn't have the resources I needed. I think I had a moment of like, let me give back to what I wish I had. And the second part is I have four daughters that are going to this world that I want to make change for and create a climate and a community that I know they can be safe in and they can be different in and they have a voice. And
Are they
so it's
athletes?
twofold for me. Yeah, they are all athletes. And my oldest, man, she's an aspiring WNBA player, man. She is like driven to the T
Hey,
right
there's
now.
nothing
And
wrong with
so,
that. Listen. My daughter. I've done a lot of work over the years with female athletes,
mhm,
and because I looked into, and we're going to come back to that. But I when my daughter was coming in and I seen her and I started seeing talent, I didn't want to be that dad.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? I want to get my daughter. I didn't want to be that dad, but I started seeing talent, and then I started seeing kind of what she was given as coaching and preparation, and you probably she's a couple years behind you age wise. I think
yeah,
she's probably 3 years behind you age wise,
mhm,
but you guys, if you were good athletes, you didn't really get coached after that.
mhm, mhm,
You were just kind of just you were almost the example. Do what Hillary does,
yeah, yeah,
or Hillary, get up there and show them how to do it. I mean, it's like,
mhm,
wait a minute. Or if you weren't the prototypical athlete, which my daughter wasn't as a soccer player, She was muscular.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't a long distance runner, but she can sprint up and down the field all day.
Mm-hmm.
So she had a lot of things that coaches looked at. And when I say she was muscular, she was muscular. She wasn't chunky. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And because if she was, we'd have ran that off long ago. But my point in this whole thing is, I still don't know that female athletes get a fair shake. It's getting better, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
know that they get a fair shake in the performance world, in the preparation world, in the competition
Mm-hmm.
world, in
Mm-hmm.
the media, in whatever. So go
Yeah.
back to what you were talking about. I'll get down off my little pedestal and let you keep talking.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I went through it, and it's relatable. It was relatable to me. I can relate to it. I can feel it. I can see it. And I want my kids to have better, right? I want
Yeah,
them to be better than I am. I think as a parent, that's what you strive for. Like, I want to inspire and lead and help a lot of people. And specifically, I want my girls to look up and say, man, my mom's doing cool stuff. But I want them to be better than me and be in a place
yeah.
that they can have a better place to do that with. And so I think for me, I just have to keep doing what I believe in, which is connecting to humans, to see them, to hear them, to provide a safe place for them, so they can go out and thrive.
Well, so advice to, and I do this at the end of everyone, if you remember, advice to professionals coming into the overall field of performance and into your specific professional expertise specifically. Specifically.
So,
Yeah.
specific advice to professionals in my space, I would say find people doing the work that you want to do and reach out and connect. Just ask for a conversation because you cannot do this alone. You cannot grow by yourself. You need to connect and continuously learn. And so, reach out and connect and keep learning.
Okay. So okay, we're still going forward. You're going forward. Other professionals connecting
Mhm.
that are not in your field.
Well, I would say if we're working with humans and performance, I'm only one domain of the mental and emotional. And so we have to work together and we need to be interdisciplinary, we need to be holistic, and we need to learn together and realize to help an individual actually thrive in that performance domain, all of us have to be on the same page.
On the same page, and holistic is one of those words.
Yeah, all these pop words, right? Holistic culture,
Yeah,
mental health.
but holistic is one of those words that sometimes when I use it, I'm not sure everybody knows what it actually is or
Mm.
what you actually mean by that. So can you give us a definition?
Uh, a definition of holistic is a multi approach to a person's care, right? Not just one way to do it, but it's a multitude of different aspects helping an individual thrive in a natural way for that person.
Okay, and the key part you said was right there at the end for that person.
Yep.
Because if
Yep.
we're not looking at them as individuals and doing something that's specifically for them, then we probably after the first 10 minutes we're wasting time.
Right. And if we're being real in the environment, not everyone is going to come work with me. Some people are good with where they're at, and I'm going to respect that and say, awesome, I'm only here if you need me. Use
Okay,
your people.
so just in general, talking about. I mean, I was back in 2000, 2003, somewhere in there. I used to tell athletes, "Hey, go work with so and so. He's a trainer at X wherever."
Mm-hmm.
And they go, "Coach, why are you sending us off to somebody else?" I said, "Because I need you to see something else. I need you to understand why I'm asking you to do this." But right now, you don't. Right now, your confidence in what you're doing is not there. And I said, it's either me or what we're doing. Either way, go. You keep talking about your buddies training with so and so. Go spend a couple weeks with so and so. I said, then if you feel like it, I'll be right here, and I'm open that you really want me to go train with someone else. No, I want you to learn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a difference.
Right.
I
100%.
I don't want you to. Well, coach, you run too much. What sport? Tell me what sport you don't run. Just give me one. Don't say
Hmm.
playing pool. Don't say golf
I mean,
either.
swimming you don't run.
Well, yeah, right.
I'm sorry. You asked me. You asked me. I
You
had to do
got
it.
me.
I had to do it.
You got me. But you know the point. Look, listen. I have old coaches um, that coached me back when I was young, and they tell you I hated to run. I hated
Hmm.
it. Hated
Yeah.
it. By the time I got to college, I just ran all the time. And then when I got into the military course, that's part of the physical culture is running.
Hmm.
And I wasn't a great runner, but the bottom line is I ran because you needed to be successful in whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
My point there is if you're going somewhere and you're not getting what you need to be successful at what you're doing, why are you going there?
Right.
So go figure out if I'm giving you what you need, and if I am, come on back. I'll be happy to help you. If not, then I'll give you a good review, whatever you need. As long as it was there. Well, Coach, you told.
Hmm.
Here's the last little anecdote. Coach, you told the coach from such and such college that I missed half of my workouts. I said, okay. We had 18 workouts scheduled over the last 2 months. I said, how many did you come to? 8. Okay. I said, what's 8 times 2? 16. I
Hmm.
said we had 18 workouts.
Hmm.
You know, 8 is less than half. Did I lie?
Right.
See, I held him accountable, or
Hmm.
I held him responsible for. Because if he'd have came to
Right.
12, 15, I'd have said, hey, he showed up at the majority of the workouts in XXX. But anyway,
Hmm.
all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a great time here talking with Hillary Cauthen. Again, we've learned some stuff about what she's doing and the book.
Hmm.
Don't forget the book.
Don't forget the book, guys.
And what's going on in the future a little bit. What you got coming up?
Hmm.
She has 4 aspiring young athletes, all girls.
All girls.
All girls.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
I had one girl and gave it up. Quit. Stop.
I got all
No
four. All of
more.
them.
But and we're gonna keep up with you as we've done the last year, and we're gonna see what you got going on. You might get a message or two from me. I won't bother you too much, but don't be afraid to check in. Tell us what you're doing.
Yes, sir. You got it. I appreciate it.
And
I love coming on, chatting, and continuing to just keep getting better.
yes, and yes, indeed. And we are glad that you took some time to spend with us. And we're going to invite you back, like I said. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, that's our guest today, Hillary Cauthen. I'm Yul Gordon, and this is Performance Talk.